An unusual protest in the woods of northern Germany. The crowds are celebrating the erection of a simple wooden hut. On the same spot, 30 years ago, stood many more like it. I'm in Gorleben, in a rural region known as the Wendland. For decades, it has been the focal point of protests against nuclear power in Germany. For the people here, this hut is a symbol of democracy, a symbol of resistance, which they hope will stop the building here of a permanent dump for nuclear waste. One of the symbolic figures in the protest movement is Andreas Graf von Bernstorff. He's an earl, the local landowner, a role more readily associated with the establishment than with anti-nuclear activists. But von Bernstorff is very much on their side. He's fighting with them and is shown due respect. This is his land, he tells me. He inherited it, and he's responsible for it. If something happens on his land that he doesn't agree with, he feels a completely different sense of duty than a politician would. A politician might say, okay, let's do it, but he doesn't. He admits he does not have the legitimacy of an elected official, but he says his mandate stems from his family's ownership of the land over hundreds of years. To the people here, von Bernstorff is a man of honor. Where others sold their land to the nuclear industry, he remained firm. This is what the current protests are about. Right next to the Earl's Forest is a mine, tunneling into underground salt deposits. The nuclear industry wants to use it as a depot for highly radioactive waste from its reactors. Some waste would be stored directly under von Bernstorff's land. I wanted to find out how the Gorleben protests first began. A local restaurant hosts an exhibition on the early days of the movement. In the 1970s, the West German government decided to set up a storage facility in the Wendland. So, in 1980, activists descended on the intended site and built a makeshift village, known as the Free Republic of Wendland. The village became more than a protest. It was a utopian community, where everyone was involved in decision-making. Margaret Cullen was one of those involved in setting up the village. She was also there when police cleared the site 4 weeks later. The wooden huts may have gone, but the resistance to the nuclear waste facility continues to this day. That's what's so special about Gorleben, Margaret tells me, that a social movement can keep going for so long. And it involves people from so many walks of life, farmers, teachers, scientists, freaks, everybody. The movement has, though, suffered its defeats. Between two villages, opposite the mine, a temporary storage facility has been built. To this day, spent fuel rods are brought here from nuclear power stations. They'll stay until a permanent site is found, wherever that may be. The protest movement here now spans several generations. Young people like Ronja Tida have taken up the fight. She's just left school. In the Wendland, there's little talk of jaded, apolitical youth. Ronja has joined the Green Party's youth wing. She's currently helping a leaflet campaign. But when the trains come in, bringing nuclear waste to Gorleben, Ronja is one of those who block the tracks.
Ich weiß, dass es der Staat so sieht, dass es
She knows that in the eyes of the state, her actions are not really legal.
weil ich das nicht annehmen kann.
But she says that for her, her actions are legitimate because she cannot accept nuclear waste coming in.
Obwohl es für mich total unvernünftig ist.
And she does not want power stations running when she finds them dangerous. She says she may act illegally, but
Ist dir egal?
Ist mir nicht, ja, sozusagen, naja, nicht egal, aber
she says she really doesn't care. She says the blockades are legitimate, and she feels that she's doing the right thing.
Ja, es ist so unbedingt verboten.
Ronya clearly has her convictions, and she is not afraid to fight for what she believes in. The Gorleben protest movement is coordinated from this office. It's here that all resistance against a permanent waste facility is planned. I've come to a meeting of the main committee. The planning is meticulous. Who will be where and at what time? But much of the discussion centers on legal details. What can protesters get away with? And what would prompt arrest? This is all far removed from the hippie utopia of 30 years ago. This team is as well informed as a group of lawyers. The activists are committed to their cause. But wherever possible, they also want to avoid breaking the law. Some of the things they are planning cannot be made public, so I'm ushered out of the meeting.
Dankeschön.
I go to see one of the movement's founders. Marianne Fritzen is now 86, the grand old lady of the anti-nuclear campaigners. She describes herself as Germany's oldest demonstrator. Over the years, from her extensive library, she has amassed a wealth of technical knowledge on the workings of nuclear power. If anyone wants arguments against it, she can deliver them, and deliver them powerfully.
Je mehr ich mich damit beschäftigt habe, umso mehr.
The more she looked into nuclear power, says Mariana, the more she became convinced that this was something she opposed. It's irresponsible, she says. People often claim the chemical industry is no different. You also often hear the line, driving is dangerous too. But a car is something you control, she says. You don't have to drive. You can drive slowly if you want to. But to her, nuclear power is a danger that she cannot influence. Something is being done to her, and she can't control it. Marianne Fritzen is not alone in her concerns over a potential nuclear disaster. Around the world, millions of people think like she does. The Wendland certainly has its tranquil charms, but the people here seem to have real fighting spirit. They are not likely to rest until the nuclear industry has abandoned its plans to dump its waste here.